Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Card. I'm your host, Tad Kozaneski, and today it's my privilege to welcome one of the esteemed coaches in football here in South Jersey. In fact, he has more wins than any other coach who has coached here in South Jersey football history. I want to welcome to the show Coach John Oberg. John, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Ted.
How did you get started in football? How young were you when you first started playing? Give me a little background on yourself.
I guess I was probably about 8 or 9. We had Linwood AA. In Linwood, Linwood Marcus Hook area is a very small area. And I started playing back then. Then I went to Chi under Tony Appichell, and I played at Chi Chester.
Okay.
Then I went to Valley Forge Military for a year of prep. Then I went to University of Delaware for 4 years and played under the legend Dave Nelson down there, who invented the wing T. And that's what we played. That's what we ran Delsea for over the years.
Now, when you played, again, I hope don't want to insult you or anything with this. Now, you played without the face guards and the helmets?
In high school, we didn't have the face mask. My sophomore year or my junior year in college was the first time we put like one bar. And of course, we got into cold weather, it would snap.
Would it really?
Yeah. It was made of some kind of a plastic, and I guess it got cold or something, got brittle.
Now, I hear the stories when we hear the NFL players of that time playing. Now, they talk about in the pile-ups, the elbows were flying, the knees were going. Was that the way it was on your level when you were playing?
Probably exaggerated, but probably at the pro level it was, but in high school and college level I didn't really see it. I can recall as a freshman playing at Delaware, we played what they call the Eagles defense, where the linebacker would hit on the end. And I can remember we were playing Lehigh freshmen, and the first thing this end did to me was a punch me right in the nose.
Just out of nowhere.
Just out of nowhere. Of course, I spent the rest of the ball game trying to get back at him, you know.
But you stayed in the game then?
Yeah, I stayed in the game, yeah.
I think that's a big change. A lot of players today might just kind of walk their way to the sidelines.
Well, look at my nose. You can see we didn't play with a face mask back when I played.
Was it a big adjustment after you got the face mask? Did it bother you at all?
Not really. It wasn't a big adjustment, no.
I assume you were a two-way player. What positions did you play?
I played fullback, and I was what we consider a cornerback now, the outside halfback.
Is there a certain one of the two that you like playing better for a certain reason?
I was probably a better defensive football player, and I think I was a better defensive coach than offense. I mean, I wasn't any burner. I mean, back then, I don't think there was too many burners. I mean, I may have ran a 4.8 40 maybe.
What type of play were the games back then? Was it all running? Was there any passing at all?
Well, you know, the Delaware wing T, we ran a basic bootleg back then, but instead of running, like we run with the fullback out in the flat and then maybe the wing with the ends to the corner. Back then, what we would call 30 technique, just fake to the tailback, and then just the end would be the only guy out or the backside end coming across.
You can tell you're a football coach with these numbers going out of me. Phenomenal. How important was the fullback when you played to the offense?
Well, if you see the wing T, football is probably our primary runner. And it was back then, I was the primary blocker. I thought I probably should have been a tailback, but, you know.
Was it because of size you were a fullback?
Well, I was 185. I came out of high school about 165. Then I went to prep school for a year, and I came out of prep at 185. And that's what I played at the University of Delaware, 185. And I wasn't small. Our guards were only 200 pounds.
Wow.
So, I mean, I wasn't really a small fullback, although we did have some 195, 200-pound fullbacks back then.
Now, as you got out of Delaware, what happened as you got out of college?
Well, from Delaware, I took ROTC in college, and I went in to serve as a second lieutenant. And I was in there for 2 years, and I came out as a first lieutenant. I took airborne and ranger training while I was in the service. And when I came out of service in 59, I went to Delmar, Delaware as a head football coach. What I had told Coach Lude, who was a line coach at Delaware at the time, is that I wanted to be a head coach. I didn't want to come out as an assistant coach. He says, find me a head coaching job, coach. I want to find out if I was going to be any good at it. So they ended up at Delmar, Delaware, and I got a group of kids, a lot of talent. We went undefeated, and of course, from there on, it was pretty good for me.
Was it to
I'm
Delsea?
a pretty lucky guy.
Was it from Delsea, right from Delmarva? How did you
I went
transfer?
from Delmar to Delsea.
Okay.
I was at Delmar 1 year. That was in 59. I came to Delsea in 1960. And at the time, Delsea was a brand new school. The only thing we did different at Delsea than most new schools do is they'll start like with a ninth grade program. Have ninth grade football, then JV for a couple of years, then than varsity football.
Okay.
When I came in '60, they started right out with a varsity program, 9-game varsity program. And it was kind of tough the first 3 or 4 years because what we had was we had kids coming from Clayton and from Glassboro, putting them on the same team. Just the year before, they're big rivals.
Oh, okay.
And the first 2 or 3 years is kind of hectic.
And that's got to be a big challenge, too, as a coach, to bring everyone together as one unit.
It was a great challenge, but at the time I was lucky. I had Sal Marquez, who was my line coach for 30 years. He came in with me the first year, and Joe Saya and Larry Aldridge. And these people were excellent coaches, and I was really lucky there that I had good assistants around me.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, that's been my strength over the years. I've always had great assistants.
That's something I really have to compliment you on. I've talked to a lot of coaches throughout the years. A lot of them fail to mention their assistants, and I think that's very commendable.
Well, like I say, I'm a lucky guy. When you're not real intelligent, you make sure that you surround yourself with intelligent people, you know.
What we're going to do is take a short break. We'll be back with the lucky guy, Coach John Oberg, right after this. Welcome back to the Sports Card. I'm your host, Tad Kozaneski. This week's guest, the football coaching legend, John Oberg. And we left off, you just got to Delsea High School. But I wanted to ask you talked about your military training. How was that influential in you being a coach?
Well, when I went into the service, I guess at the time I'm 24, 23, 24, and I think it taught you discipline. And I think I carried that over pretty much in my football program, even the 34 years that I coached football, and I stayed with basic rules. I taught the kids, you know, you're in school, you're a good citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the teacher's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you adjust to the teacher. And I said to you, you got to be on time, you got to be at practice on time, and you got to be at practice every day. And that was very basic, simple rules.
When did you decide that you wanted to become a coach?
When I went to the University of Delaware, I was under the influence of Dave Nelson, who was an excellent teacher, and he really taught you football. And I think from that, through his teachings, then I formed this love for football. And of course, I followed pretty much his offense over the years. The defense is something we more or less put together as a coaching staff at Delsea. We started in probably about '65 up until we ran what we call the Eagles defense or the Oklahoma. And then we found out that we just couldn't play teams like Pengrove and Salem and play what we call a 7-man front. We had to get an 8-man front up there.
Okay.
So then we came up with the 5-3 and all the different options off the 5-3. And we adjusted that over the years.
What would you say early on, especially, your coaching philosophy and the Delsea football philosophy would be?
Well, I think we always set down goals. And the one goal that we always set was we're going to win Tri-County. That was the key.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, you know, now, of course, we have the playoffs in the States. At one time, in the 60s, it was mythical.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they come up with certain numbers, you beat certain teams, and you become a mythical champ.
Mm-hmm.
And our philosophy, and that's how we set our philosophy from the standpoint of our goals.
Why has Delsea been such a successful program under your reign?
Well, I think in Franklin Township and Elk Township, what we have, I don't think we get great athletes like the Glassboro we get, or even the Gloucester's got over the years. I think what we get a kid, a very dedicated kid, get a very loyal kid, and he's willing to work hard, and he's a pretty disciplined kid. See, when I first came here, this is pretty much a farm area.
Mm-hmm.
So we really had kids who were well disciplined. I mean, they got it from the homes.
Was there a midget program established in this area back then?
The midget program, Eddie Hoffman played a midget program. Eddie was probably about 19, Jim Daly started, I think it was 19, I'd say 62, Jimmy started for us.
And how helpful or hindered was the midget program? I've heard good and bad from high school coaches.
Well, to me, I became a very big part of it. My son coaches Little League now. But over the years, I mean, they ran the wing tee. They ran basically our defenses, and I would go down. I would lecture to the coaches, and they used our system. So the kids had a basic idea coming into high school what we were doing, our numbering system and our basic offensive system, and also our numbering on defensive system and the basic defensive system.
Can you talk a little bit about the 1960s and football at Delsea? What are some of your memories of the 60s?
The 60s, and you really drive me back here. Well, 60, like I say, we came in the first 3 or 4 years, we started out with a varsity program. So it was pretty tough. We were going like 4-4-1, 5-3-1. In about 66, we started to become a pretty good program. And the game I remember most in probably in the 60s would be, we were undefeated in 68, and we played Pennsville over there, and Lou D'Angelo was the coach, and in his tenure at Pennsville, they had great football teams. And that particular day, they had a guy by the name of Bobby Gallagher, quarterback. And he's very quick, a very elusive runner, and that was a great football game. And we won it. It was for Tri-County Championship that year. And we won it maybe in the last quarter of the game.
What we're going to do right now is we are going to take a quick break, and we're going to move things into the 70s and the 80s. We're reliving some memories with Coach John Oberg, now the current athletic director at Delsea High School. We'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to the Sports Card. I'm your host, Tad Kozaneski. This week's guest, John Oberg, longtime coach at Delsea High School, the winningest coach ever in high school sports here in South Jersey. We left off talking about the 60s. Let's move it to the 70s now. Do you have a couple teams or some things that stand out in your mind?
Well, in the 70s was a very good decade for us. I think I was reading an article up in the New York Times or whatever Ledger, Star Ledger or something. We're in the period of the 70s and the 80s. I think we had the most winning percentage in the state. I think we were like 87% wins in that period of time. And then, I don't know where this reporter got it from. Somebody must keep stats somewhere. But in the 70s, probably the one thing that really sticks in my mind in the 70s is our game with Gloucester on Thanksgiving Day at Delsea in a rain. I think Leon Harris, the present coach here, was a quarterback of that team. And it was 71, 1971, and it rained nice. And we ended up in an 8-8 tie. And they had been undefeated like for 2 years coming into that game. And it was a very cold day, very wet day. Kids walked on the field. Must have been that much water. And I can remember how, on that given day it was really cold. But our kids played well, played extremely well. And that was a tough football team. And that football team, 71, we went undefeated one tie a year, and then they continued, and they went undefeated the next year. So that team had like a streak of maybe 20, 21 straight wins. And then we had the 75 and 76 football team. They started the state playoffs in 75, and we didn't make it for some reason or other. But that was a good football team. My son John was a quarterback on that team, and we beat a great Salem football team over there. When we knew his son was a quarterback, we knew his son went down to Wake Forest and became an All-American down there. But the 76 football team went 11-0, and that was the first year we got into a state playoff. And we won the Group 2 that year. Then the 79, 78, and 79 team was, I think that group of kids lost like 2 ball games. In the 78 team, we got into the playoffs, and just so happened that the pep rally before the game, 4 of my starters got themselves in trouble in school, so we benched them for that game. But the next year in 79, we went 11-0, and we beat Eastern for the Group 3. We were Group 3 in 78 and 70. I don't know if I said that before. But that was a great era for us. The 70s is a great era.
You think, is that like your golden era, if you will?
The 80s is pretty. We won 3 sectional champions in the 80s. 82 was a great year. 84 was a great year. And
seems like every year was a great year.
86. I mean, whatever years we won championships. In fact, our present coach now, Sal Marquez Jr., he was a quarterback on the 83 and 84 team. And he was a sophomore on the 82 football team, as a linebacker. And I think over his period, that 3 years, I think Sal's team only lost like 3 games.
That is incredible. You'd mentioned about the playoffs in the 70s and not understanding why you got in or not got in. I know a couple years ago you had a pretty good Delsea team, and they felt like they were kind of left at the doorstep, if you will. I'm kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit. I'm just kind of curious. Do you think the playoff format we have right now is an okay, or should there be little modifications made to it?
I like it. You know, our young coaches think there should be like 8 teams in the playoffs, which I agree with them.
Okay.
I agree with them. But I don't want to start to see, like, in Tri-County now, we start football September 1st. And my philosophy there has always been, if you have 4 weeks to get your team ready as a coach, you have enough time.
Okay.
As long as everybody you're playing in the first 4 or 5 games
Same time as you.
starting the same time as we are.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem comes in. But I could see add another week and go to 8 teams. I mean, in most sports, you only have to have 500 record. So that means everybody has a shot at it.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have a 500, you don't belong in there anyhow.
That's correct.
You know what I mean?
So you would like to see him possibly add like is it a 9th or 10th week to the schedule? One extra week
One
of
extra
regular
week.
season
One
play
extra
to
week.
qualify.
But I don't want to see them taking it into the summer.
Yeah. You still want to see September
I
1st
like
start.
September 1st. I know in Tri-County some of the schools are trying to start a week earlier. But I grew up in Pennsylvania. I remember we started football back in the middle of August back.
And it's hot.
It's hot. And I always think from the kids' point of view. I mean, it gives them another extra week to work. And at Delsea, one thing I'll say about our kids, a lot of our kids work.
Really?
Yeah.
That's got to be difficult. Is that maybe a distraction that the modern athlete might have of this era as opposed to when you first started?
Yes. Well, the thing is, and we live in a regional area. We're spread out. I think we're like 83 square miles, Franklin Township, Elk Township. And for our kids to get from one point to another point, you may be talking, for to come to our school, some of our kids go 11 miles.
Man.
My grandson lives down in the Flora Avenue, and it takes him something like an hour to get to school by bus.
Boy, that's amazing.
So kids have to have a car, and the biggest problem with a car is the kids have to pay for insurance. Now you're talking about
Yeah.
$1,200-$1,500.
What we'll do is we'll take a short break. We'll elaborate more on the changes of what the players were like from back in the early 60s to what they are today when we return here on the Sports Card. Welcome back to the Sports Card. I'm your host, Tad Kozaneski. This week's guest, John Oberg, the longtime coach at Delsea High School and the current athletic director at Delsea. You had some coaches that you really wanted to give some credit for helping you out.
Well, I had Johnny Roberts. Johnny was my backfield coach since about '66. Johnny played for me down in Delmar, and I was down in Delmar, Delaware. John has done an excellent job over the years, and we have Jim Rafferty, coached the line. He also was a freshman coach for years. And Dave Bradley was my end coach and did an outstanding job for me. And Rick Chappelle was with the present staff, and he coached Mr. Rafferty, Coach Rafferty on the freshman team. He did, and these guys have been with me for since, like I say, Johnny came with me in 66, 65.
Wow.
And the other coaches came with me like 72, 73. So we've been together a long time, and I got to give these coaches a lot of credit for if I had success, you know.
We had talked about the way kids have changed kind of off the field before we went to break. Have the kids changed on the field since the 60s up to today?
Well, kids have more to do, and that seems to be the problem. And I think the loyalty factor, which we got from kids at one time, it's a problem today. I really feel sorry for young coaches because they didn't have the same luxury that we did with kids. The fact when a kid came out as a freshman, he stayed with us for 4 years. In fact, we went through a long period of time there where we only had maybe 3 or 4 sophomore kids ever start. We'd have a kid come as a freshman. He'd play freshman football. He'd play a little bit as a sophomore. Really take a beat in the sophomore year from the upperclassmen and got himself tough. And then played JV as a junior. Then he'd come right in as a senior and play varsity. And I think if we were really successful with our kids, from the loyalty factor point of view, was the kids knew when they got to be a senior, they became a pretty good football player. They got to know the system that they're going to play.
Do you think the players are better today? I hear a lot of things like they're quicker than they were back in the 60s, per se.
I would say they are. I'd say they're bigger. I think they're stronger. I mean, we just built a new weight room over in high school. You got to see it. This thing's phenomenal. We've always had a weight room. And Sal Marquez, he was in charge of our weights over the years. But the new weight room we have in a new addition on the school, which is gorgeous. I mean, this is really going to make the kids.
Has the style of game changed with the players changing? You say a little bigger, a little quicker. Or is the game basically the same thing it was when you started?
I think so. What you do is you'll see a little more, they'll spread you out a little bit more now, one back, offense and so forth. But I don't think there's anything really been new in football for a long time. I think what people do is just they go back to what was done years ago, and they just throw it in and give it a different name.
Mm-hmm. How tough has it been to leave the coaching profession?
Well, in '92, I had a triple bypass, and that was like in the middle of the season. And I talked to the doctors, and the doctor said it'd probably be good if I stayed on. But I was also athletic director over the years, too. And with the addition of the boys and girls soccer and other programs in the fall, it became pretty difficult to be the AD and also do a good job from the coaching point of view. And what I found out, and I was getting tired.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know I was having problems with my arteries going into my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And at one time, of course, I'd study films, look at films for hours and hours and hours, and it got to the point I just couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought I was getting old. You
Mm-hmm.
know? But once I made up my mind, I wasn't going to coach anymore. Then, of course, it was easy.
It was easier, though, you think?
Yeah, just stayed out of it. Yes.
You just shut it. You
Just shut it
hit a
off.
switch, and you didn't have an urge to get back out there.
Not really. I think the worst thing a coach can do is if he's coached over the years and you bring in a young coach is to interfere.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I think sometimes if you get involved in the thing, then I think it might destroy your relationship with that coach. And we have a good young staff right now.
Mm-hmm.
And as years go on, I think it's going to be a great football staff.
What we're going to do is take a quick break. We'll be back with more at the coach, John Oberg, right after this. Well, Coach, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Ted.
All right, next week here on the Sports Card, we will have Boyd Sands, the director of the NJSIAA. We will see you next Saturday morning here on the Sports Card.